This is my £375 Range Rover, which I drove from London to Paris and back on 1 tank of fuel.
Well, sort of.
Oh,
As many of you already know, the trip wasn't exactly smooth sailing. The car ran into major issues on the way as we approached into Paris, and what should have been a simple drive quickly turned into a stressful nightmare.
oh my God, this is so bad.
But somehow, it got me to the Eiffel Tower, and the suspected issue? It's very serious, and the stress of a broken car abroad? Also very real.
I actually don't know what to say. And after 609 miles, the car is finally back home, but with a fair few warning lights on, and more worryingly, that suspension issue, well, it's collapsed.
So in today's video, we will look at the aftermath from this disaster trip which nearly killed the Range Rover, but also try and DIY fix some of those issues.
Do it.
And then finally, we can break down exactly how much this whole trip cost me. And if you've been enjoying the £375 Range Rover series so far, do me a massive favour and hit that subscribe button right now.
Now, first thing you're going to see is the car is completely sat on its arse. It is so collapsed right now, the suspension, but we do have a potential fix for that, which we are going to get to later on in the video. But I wanted to just show you some of the calamities along the way off this Paris trip. Now, to start with, you can see we are missing a front mud flap. Actually on both sides, but on the other side it does get a little bit worse. The issue I had was because the car is sat so low, and when the car was collapsed and if the suspension wasn't rising up, that front mud flap was scraping along the ground, especially when going over small speed bumps, and it just wasn't ideal if I am going to be driving this car back home, especially for moments if the suspension was to collapse on the way back, because I did say we had moments of joy where the compressor was working, but it's absolutely dead right now. It is absolutely on its arse. I mean, some of you guys might think this car looks great sat like this, but it is not very practical, and one thing I can assure you, it is not very comfy at all. Now, the other thing I mentioned was over here. So this trim piece, I still do have it, but it was a bit flimsy, so I just yanked it off because in the moment of where the car was giving me some small problems, I just wanted to get that mud flap taken off, and in the midst of things, that was loose, so I just ripped it off the car. So I do at some point need to get those sorted, assuming we can get the suspension issue rectified. But even still, walking around the car, yes, it's not quite the Range Rover we started this journey with. However, I do think we can potentially get this issue fixed. It's looking like it's going to be a compressor issue, but I do want to clarify that by plugging in my diagnostic machine. Only issue is the battery has died since then, and obviously when you disconnect the battery, put it on charge, it kind of does get rid of some fault codes potentially. So I'm hoping those fault codes will still be there because it will clarify to us what the issue exactly is, if it is a compressor or if we have some other issues. But as I said, there were many dash warning lights. So let's jump in, let's get that machine plugged in and see what it's saying exactly. So let's make a start with this and see what the codes are on the car. Okay, all systems have been detected. Now, there isn't any engine management ones, and obviously you will remember we had a big problem on the way to Paris, so that probably is to do with the fact that the car battery was disconnected. But ride level control, air supply, okay, here we go. So this is to do with why the car has collapsed. C1A20, pressure increases too slow when filling reservoir. Now that, from my understanding, is a fault code which is definitely linked to having an issue with the air compressor in the boot.
And for further clarity, a quick look on Google shows us within the first 2 lines that this fault code is accompanied with the message suspension fault, normal height only, which is exactly what I was seeing prior to the disaster.
Seat module, not an issue. TPMS, it's fine. Heating, ventilation, left head. These are all small things, but what I'll do is for now is I'm going to clear all these fault codes, and then hopefully later on, once we do check the car again, a lot of those codes won't be here because they are to do with a battery issue. Battery being drained does cause, error codes to pop up. If you remember, there was codes popping up saying vehicle will rise when cools down, so it all does suggest the compressor was overworking. Maybe we have a leak somewhere, but equally it could be coming from the compressor. So let's get this car taken back home. We'll swap out that air compressor for a new one, see if the car raises back to its normal height. If it does, plug in the diagnostic machine, check for codes, see if anything remains, and then take this car for a drive, and fingers crossed we can save this Range Rover with 200,000 miles on the clock from being scrapped or turned into a car for spare parts. So let's get on with it.
You will need to remove the spare wheel to gain access, which is always fun in a Range Rover. Then you'll need to remove the 4 bolts from each corner, which then gives you full access to the compressor unit. Slightly concerning to see this much condensation build up, and judging from the rust, it looks like this has been an issue for quite some time. Probably one of the reasons why this compressor may have failed on our journey, but it's getting replaced now, so hopefully all good from here. Now we need to disconnect the 2 electrical connectors from the unit. Then we can remove another 4 bolts, which keeps the unit secured to the car. And finally, we can disconnect our airline with a 12mm spanner. Now we can go ahead and start putting the new replacement in, securing it in position and connecting up the electrical connectors as well as the airline. And that's how you repair an air compressor unit on an L322 Range Rover.
Let's try start the car and see if that compressor engages. All right, car is on. Yep, I can hear the compressor running loud and clear. Just trying to see if the car is raising. I'm gonna let the compressor do its thing.
Yeah, let me explain what just happened. This little airline has come off from its fitting, as I accidentally damaged an olive compression fitting while fitting it back up, which meant driving to JLR service centre to pick up a replacement part. So if you are doing this yourself, be careful, as it's very fragile and £17.50 plus the VAT to replace it. But now let's get it fitted back up again, and fingers crossed it doesn't explode this time.
Okay, let's give this another go, and fingers crossed the suspension is sorted. Compressor's kicked in, suspension light is on. I'm just going to leave it for a minute or so before I try and lift the car up. I'm just a little bit nervous to get close in case that pipe bursts off again, because that was bloody loud. It's getting a little bit louder. I wonder if the car's going up. Well, let's try it down first. Oh. Well, the car's moving. The car's moving. The car's raising. Yes! Yes! No fault code on the dash either. Yes! I am loving this. Suspension is working. Oh, thank God for that.
That was a big relief, because buying a cheap Range Rover doesn't always mean cheap ownership. But in this instance, what was a dangerous issue and having the potential to make it not viable to repair turned out to be something most of us could do at home with some basic DIY skills and some tools. I guess this really is turning out to be a cheap Range Rover. However, we need to see if it still drives properly before we jump to conclusions.
You can't kill the old girl that easy. Can you believe it? The Range Rover is back on the road, driving fantastic. What a road trip that was. Honest to God, guys, that was something epic. There were so many things that went right, and equally there were so many things that went wrong with this car. The strangest thing being, at exactly 200,000 miles, this car decided to go, no thanks, I'm done with life. I've done what I needed to do. Range Rover shouldn't be at this miles. Game over. As I said, you couldn't write this sort of stuff, but we had various faults. Car went into limp mode, rapidly started decreasing speed on the motorway. Quick turning off the car, putting it back on, seemed to fix it. But from that, it was a downward hill spiral of fault after fault after fault. And the biggest one being the suspension, as you saw, which just collapsed big time. And driving on them roads in Paris, a lot of cobble streets with effectively No suspension. I genuinely wish that you would understand how bad it was. The video did not do it justice, guys. It was so much worse being in that car. And the biggest stress was that, how am I going to get this car back home? And I did have breakdown cover, but it wasn't so straightforward, which is something I'll touch on later on. Main thing is, I got the car back home. There clearly was an issue with the air compressor. It was intermittently working once it was cooling down, so the car would rise, but the journey back was very slow, very delicate, and it wasn't a fun drive, so I didn't want to film it. Originally the plan was for me to film this car being driven back on the tank of fuel and seeing, you know, if we're going to make it back. Things change. Part of life of having an old Range Rover with a bit of mileage. However, here we are, back in the UK. We've got the air compressor changed on the car, not a big expense, and we're back on the road, enjoying driving the cheapest Range Rover in existence. And I know I've spent a bit of money along the way, getting this car brought up to a better standard, fixing things like the air compressor, which, in all fairness, this is an old car. I'm not expecting miracles from it. It was a non-runner, spares or repair car, and the fact that it made it to Paris, even with the issue of the air compressor, I think it was just bad luck. I genuinely do think that it was just bad luck, because since I've changed this air compressor and popped on the new one, which I got from eBay, there is no suspension fault on the dash. All the codes are completely clear. So I think we probably had an underlying issue with the suspension, which I thought was fixed, but unfortunately it was more related to the compressor. And in regards to the issue of the car going into limp mode, well, it hasn't done it since, but it's not obviously something which cars are meant to do. Clearly there must be some issue somewhere, but it hasn't done it since. It didn't do it on the way back from Paris. We don't have any fault codes at present, so maybe I just need to drive this car a little bit more, see if the issue persists, and if it does, get the machine plugged in and find out what that issue is. But guys, it's 200,000 miles. It's a cheap Range Rover. I'm not expecting miracles. It's a bit of a project car. However, I will be getting this car put for sale. I'm going to pop it on eBay, no reserve auction. It will go to the highest bidder, because for me, this car's done what it needed to do. It was a fantastic buy, great for the channel. I got some amazing content. The car's been saved. However, being such a high mileage example, it's never going to be perfect. It's going to have niggly issues. So I don't need to have two old Range Rovers. And equally, I have got another edition coming to the garage in August now. Fingers crossed, it is a bit delayed. So this one's got to go. I will put it on eBay at some point shortly. And if it is at the same time, I'll pop a link in the description below or in the comments. So if you do want to bid on this car, no reserve auction, it will go to the highest bidder. This car isn't for profit. I'm probably going to take a loss on this car because I've spent a lot of money on getting it prepped, but that's beside the point. It's a cool car, cheap enough for someone to buy, bit of a project, but equally you can, as we are now, just get in this car and take it for a nice drive. For the money, what a car. What a car.
Especially when you consider this all started as a £375 bid, which came home on the back of a recovery truck. But with some patience, I managed to get the engine running.
No freaking way, no.
And from that, I put some more time and effort into bringing this old girl back to life, replacing damaged parts, getting the car serviced and replacing those lower arms. I wanted it to drive exactly how a Range Rover should, gliding on the road, and then being able to take it for its first proper drive, which put a massive smile on my face. But now, I wanted it to look the business, so I put the time into fixing those cloudy headlights as they were pretty bad, replacing the damaged fog light and then getting the car valeted at my local car wash, as it was a serious skip to begin with. And what a difference it made. Just look at it. But ultimately, this was all to get us ready for the big road trip to Paris, and things were looking great up until the Eurotunnel, where our first issue was noted. But even still, with all the challenges faced, this car really pushed through and still somehow got us all the way to the Eiffel Tower.
So let's get into some of those costs now of this whole Paris trip, the saga, and the problems we've had involved and just generally what that means in terms of a number. Let's start with the fuel. Filled up the tank and we did do the whole journey there and back, and we just had a little bit of fuel left, but I would still call it near enough a full tank, which cost me £127.88. Then we had the whole train issue. So my original ticket was around £130, but due to missing the train because of the M25 incident where it was closed, I had to then pay an additional £220 on the spot for another ticket. Then getting into Paris, there are obviously tolls involved. Now there is one going there and one coming back. That equated to just about £50. Breakdown cover, which is £65. Hotel, that was £49. And the compressor, which we've now replaced, that was from eBay, £107, which makes a total cost for this whole Paris trip, not including the car, £748.88. Not so much of a budget road trip this ended up being.
And if you've enjoyed this Range Rover series, give it a like and a subscribe. Stay tuned, and I'll see you all on the next adventure. Take care, guys.